Well, I'm delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast this week is Nathan Moore. Now, Nathan will be a familiar face to many people, particularly from fans of 80s and 90s music, where Nathan was a significant part of Brother Beyond and then more latterly Worlds Apart. So it's a real pleasure to get Nathan on the Godcast. Hi, Nathan. How are you?
I'm good, Alex. Yeah, good to chat with you.
Yeah. And whereabouts in the world are you, Nathan?
Well, I'm local to you, in fact, because about 15 years ago, I moved up to the Northwest when I met my wife, Donna. She had a son already, and she was coming to London at weekends to see me, and then I was coming up here. And the only way to progress it forward was if one of us moved to the, it was either her to the capital or me to just above Bacup.
All right, okay.
Weir.
Weir.
Yeah, that was 15 years ago. Now I'm over in the Ribble Valley, and it's lovely. And we have our son Nico now, he's 11. So life is good.
Was that a difficult move at first, Nathan? Coming, if people don't know Bacup, it's a little bit kind of the back of Beyond, isn't it? It's in eastern Lancashire.
I couldn't believe how wet and cold it was. It was a shock to me. The first few winters, the snow was so thick. I'd lived in Islington, London for years, and it kind of, you never saw things like that, So the long, dark, cold, wet winters were a bit of a shock. But I love the people. The people, you'd get on the tube in London and no one talks to each other. Here, oh my God, you have half-hour conversations with random people at, the local shop, and I love that about northern people. So there were pluses and minuses, shall we say. Life in them.
Excellent. Well, Nathan, let's have a little trip down memory lane, if that's all right. But judging by your website, you're still a very busy man. It looks like you've had a pretty busy summer and autumn. Has that been good to get working again?
Yeah, a lot of things were squashed into the latter part of the year. So after July, when performers were allowed to be on stage again, a lot of my postponed shows were pushed to then. So since July and coming out of lockdown, I've been fortunately very busy. I've had shows in the UK, summer festivals. That now I'm going into. I was at Butlins the weekend doing an 80s festival with Go West, and then I'm in France at the weekend with my band Worlds Apart. I'm fortunate. I'm back out there because lockdown was horrible for performers and artists.
Yeah, and you're like you just mentioned, you're a London guy. Kind of mentioned Islington there, but your heritage extends to Indonesia. Is that right?
My great grandfather was from South America, but it was British Guyana.
Right.
So,
okay. Right.
So that, the lineage, as it were. My father's quite, I guess, dark-skinned, and but my sister's really pale.
Really?
When you like, I don't know why we've got completely different skin, but actually, no, we're definitely 100% brother and sister.
Sure. Let's not go that way. And Nathan, what was life like living in London as a kid? Was it a happy time for you? Does it evoke happy memories for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was kind of born in Stamford Hill, but we did move out to Hertfordshire. When after summer holidays, I would come back really dark. Like we'd go off to France, and I'd come back, and I was, I kind of was taunted quite a lot as a kid. Like I was, they'd say, here's Jai, Tarzan's little boy assistant or whatever, and but apart from that, I mean, that sort of thing toughened you up a little bit, but it was great. I mean, life was fun. I played football. I did any kind of sport, from running to swimming to athletics. So sport has always been a big part of my life. My father managed my football team. We were called Broxbourne Saints. So, father and son would go to football every weekend. We're both Spurs supporters. So that binds us to this day. we both loved cycling. My dad was a very, proficient cyclist. He did the Tour of Britain. So we often, I've taken him off to the Tour de France a few times, and he's met everyone from Eddie Merckx to all the greats from that. And I was lucky because, with Worlds Apart, I got to meet some of the big French stars of cycling. And, so those guys introduced me to some of these, big names. So my dad loved that. So, sport has always bonded me and my father. And from my youth to now, it's still important to me.
Yeah. Big Spurs fans, eh?
Yeah, and it's actually a good day today for a Spurs fan. You can't normally say that. It's normally pretty horrible. But, I have a lot in common with my local Burnley brothers and sisters who support their team. It's tough, but you can't change your team. That's the way it is.
As we were recording this, Nathan's making reference to that Spurs have just appointed Antonio Conte as their new manager after a bit of a disaster with their previous supervisor. Nathan, was there any religion in your life as a young kid? Were your family religious in any way? Were you involved in church as a kid?
There was a bit of Sunday school. I remember some religious sort of stamps and stickers going into a book. But apart from that, no, not really, I have to say. I like to think of myself as a good guy, though I, do decent things, I like to think. And, I do believe in miracles, but perhaps not the religious miracles.
No. Do you participate in a kind of spiritual well-being, kind of meditation or yoga? You look like you're in good shape. What do you kind of do to keep the mind and body fit?
For me, I think you've got to keep your body fit. That really helps my mental well-being. So I run a lot. I went for like a 5-mile run yesterday. If I don't do that, I really don't feel as good. And it's that thing after you've done a really big workout, there's some endorphins. There was a little, that is my kind of drug, as it were, Yeah. Or when I come off stage, my performances are very energetic, I like to think, and I get a buzz afterwards and I feel good. So I don't need alcohol or something else to stimulate me. I've got those things going on, and that then keeps my mind all quite solid and focused. And I think my wife is a real inspiration. She just keeps going. She just is like, she just does not stop. She is. I've never known someone to be so driven and but kind and caring and thoughtful. She's just everything. So she's my guide in that area too.
Yeah. We'll perhaps come back to that in a little while, Nathan. Just tell us about the kind of road to becoming a pop star. I mean, I suppose every kid, even Vickers, dreamed that one day they might have been a pop star. How did that kind of evolve for you? Were you kind of in a kind of a drama group, or where did you get kind of noticed, or was it a case of somebody pushed you from a very early age?
If you'd have been in my class at school, you'd have said, no way would that guy ever be a pop star. You'd have said sport, maybe something to do with sport, but never that. But I was a show off. I was a show off. I'd get on the tables and dance, but not a singer. And it was my sister, my older sister, Tida. She was in a band called the Palm Tree Club, and they were in Hertfordshire, and they go out and do concerts, gigs in pubs every weekend. And she was a real inspiration. She was just wild on stage. She would, unfortunately, often take her clothes off, just sporadically as she felt like it, but it would be quite funny. And she was, she was my inspiration. I took her to band practice one day, and the other members said, "Oh, why don't you join in?" They were quite laid back about it all. Started singing along, jamming with the band and my sister. And they said, "Hey, you two are really good together." And then the next week they asked me to join the band. And and that was it. And so it's my sister, really, my sister Tida, who unfortunately passed away about 18 months ago, suddenly. So yeah, I have her to thank for really being music, you know, getting me into music. Although my dad, in his retirement, he now, you know, will busk down the market in Hackney. He gets his guitar and does, you know, Sinatra classics. And my niece is a really amazing singer. So there is a lot of music in the family. But yeah, so that it was my sister that really influenced me and got me going in it. And I didn't really feel like I was a proper singer at first. I just kind of thought, oh, this would be my route to being on top of the pops. Wouldn't it be great, you know? So I came to it more from that way, really.
Yeah. But how did that evolve to becoming in a boy band? Were you kind of were you targeted? Were you spotted at a show or something?
In a way. So the Palm Tree Club, you know, we would go out and do these pub gigs, and you know, some would be in London, and we kind of got a bit of a reputation. And then someone recommended me to a friend of Boy George's, and so Philip Salon, he was called. He used to run clubs, and so he recommended it to someone else and someone else. And then this publisher came down one day and spoke to me after a show in London, and said, "You're very good, but I'm not sure about your band. But I've got songwriters looking for a singer. Can I play you the songs?" And those songs were by a guy called Carl Fish, who was eventually became the keyboard player in Brother Beyond. And I really liked the songs. And although I loved being in the Palm Tree Club, I was like, I'd like to try something else. And, you know, and it seemed like proper songs. And so I kind of started with that and started going, you know, doing songwriting sessions with them. And eventually I had to kind of leave to take it further. So I left the Palm Tree Club, and Egg and David joined. They were two brothers initially in Brother Beyond, and they were fantastic musicians. I mean, Egg was incredible. He was only 15. He could play any instrument. When he eventually left the band, because we started working with Stock Aitken and Waterman, he eventually did an album where he played every single instrument, produced it, wrote every song. It was like the antithesis of working with Stock Aitken and Waterman. He said, right, if you're working with them, I'm going to do something completely on my own. And he went on to be very successful. And he eventually wrote Leave Right Now for Will Young.
Yeah.
So,
he's been quite a prolific songwriter, hasn't he? He's written for some significant artists.
Chasing Pavements with Adele, Warwick Avenue, Duffy. I mean, everybody take that. His, you know, so many hits. He's got Ivan Novello. So, you know, good on him. He stuck to his guns when he left the band. You know, just as we recorded The Harder I Try, he said, look, this isn't for me. I've been part of this band to write songs. Now you're getting someone else to write the stuff. What's the point of me being here? So I'm going to leave you to it. And, you know, he stuck to it, and wow, he got his success eventually.
It's a really interesting dichotomy, isn't it, Nathan? Because you go with Stock Aitken and Waterman, who bring you their hits, but I was wondering if ultimately was that the demise of Brother Beyond. I'm not quite sure of the story of how, you know, how you kind of all went your separate ways, but was that connected, do you think?
Yeah, it was connected. I mean, yes, absolutely. If we hadn't have worked with Stock Aitken and Waterman, I don't think we'd have had success. I think we were close to being dropped from EMI. So they certainly, The Harder I Try, brought us the success we were perhaps craving. The mistake that happened, I mean, we did the follow-up, He Ain't No Competition, that went top 10. So it was great. What we should have done was either do more recordings with them, or I should have done a solo album with them. And you know, but the trouble was we had Carl and everybody else who were never in the studio when I recorded The Harder I Try, feeling a bit like, well, you know, we want to write, we're here to write songs. We want to be a band. So something should have happened around that time, you know, where I just say, look, let me do a solo album and I'll come back to Brother Beyond. But then one of the band actually said something unfortunate about the record, and Pete Waterman heard it, and kind of, you know, we weren't asked to be on Ferry Aid 2, or it kind of stopped us working with them again, and which then spelled the end, because the Brother Beyond stuff written by Carl and David at the time just wasn't quite, I guess, good enough.
Yeah. And was it ultimately your decision to walk away, Nathan, from Brother Beyond, or was that decision taken for you then?
No, I stuck with the band for you know, better or worse, and our second album just wasn't successful, and we were very quickly dropped by EMI, which is what happens if you know, first few singles don't get the success that the Harder I Try or He Ain't a Competition did.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was over like that, you know.
And what was that like? Because I was just looking at a few YouTube clips of Brother Beyond. I mean, it kind of went mad really quickly, didn't it? But almost as quickly as it went mad, it kind of fell away as well. What was, you know, talked about your kind of mental well-being and keeping well. Was that a difficult time for you then when that all kind of fell apart?
Yeah, it was really difficult. I had no money because Brother Beyond just didn't. We had a big debt with the record company, so even though we sold 500,000 albums, we didn't really pay it back. So yeah, when it was over, I had nothing, and in fact, subsequently, I went bankrupt. It was, and I really didn't know what to do next, and I was trying to do a bit of TV presenting and trying some solo stuff, and nothing was really working. So I had no money, and I remember the stress caused me to go bald at the back of my head. I had alopecia caused by stress. I had to grow a long bit of hair to cover it. It was horrible. So yeah, I found I was 2 or 3 years after the end, so 91 to 93, really difficult. Didn't know, I was in the wilderness, just didn't know what to do.
Was the industry supportive? Did you feel that you'd just kind of been abandoned, or, you know, you're like your time had passed and it was onto something else then?
Oh yeah, you're cast aside. No one can help you, and there's no rule book to read up on what you should do. I mean, I know now after many years, you know, basically, if you make money quickly, you have to really save, or you have to invest in something else so that you have an income, that, you know, a passive income and all these things. But now I have a clever wife who knows about all that stuff, and so we do that now, you know. What
did you do to cope then during that time? Were you kind of contemplating getting a proper job, for want of a better word? You know, was it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I signed on for about 6 months because
really,
I had to, you know. I tried. I went to America for a little bit and tried to do some stuff out there. That didn't work, and yeah, I really was hand to mouth, just surviving. Borrowed money off my dad just to keep going, and I guess I was waiting for that lucky break. And in '94, I got it again. I got that other lucky break, and I walked into an office on the right day, on the right week. The lead singer of a band called Worlds Apart had just left after they'd done a sold out 26-date tour of Germany. And I walked into this office, and this guy saw me, and he recognized me as part of Brother Beyond, and he managed to get hold of my number, and he said, "You were in our office yesterday. Could I ask you to come back again today?" And that was my savior. I went, and he said, "Look, I'd like you to be the lead singer of a band called Worlds Apart. And I need you to say yes or no today, because I've got a gig in Germany in 5 days' time. 5,000 people waiting for a band, and I don't know how to sing." It's bonkers.
Let me know.
And I said yes, and I was there. I was in rehearsals, learning dance routines the next day, and then I was in Germany 5 days later. You know,
wow.
Saved me.
Wow. And what about the kind of the business side to that then? Were you much wiser? Were you kind of were you quite quick to put the kind of the contracts in place that would protect your financial interests?
I did better, but in truth, I still made more mistakes. I still didn't really come out with the wealth or the not the wealth, but you know, you need a cushion. Music, you know, you make this money quickly, but you must put aside your tax money.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to prepare for the rainy day that comes, because in pop it always comes. It stops very suddenly, and we're not all one direction, you know, with millions to cushion the next step. So I made even more mistakes.
Like what did you do wrong at that time then?
I kind of you know, spent lots of money on clothes and silly things and traveling, instead I didn't really buy those properties that I should, and you know, so yeah, I kind of did it all again really. But that's why moving to the Northwest and meeting my wife, and you know, I'm probably in my most financially secure position now than I ever was, and it's all to be coming up here really.
I just got to ask you, Nathan, about the kind of the adulation that comes with being a pop star. I'm not blowing smoke up the proverbial here, but you seem a very humble and a man with a lot of humility. But when you've got kind of young girls falling at your feet, was that easy to cope with? I mean, I know as a young teenage guy, you go, oh, it'd be wonderful. But looking back, you know, was it difficult to deal with that kind of adulation? Was it overwhelming at times?
Not really.
Oh, you loved it. Okay.
I wasn't the guy that picked up the guitar. I was the guy that dreamed of being on top of the pops.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I didn't mind all that stuff. I thought, well, that's great fun, isn't it? And it was. So I'm a natural people pleaser. So I was always happy to accommodate the fans. Yeah, there were times when they were sort of camped outside my flat in Islington, and I had to climb out the back window and along a wall and just shimmy down just to sort of get a few days where I could just, you know, go and do my own thing. Otherwise they'd follow me around London, you know, they just walk to the tube with me or whatever. And but no, I never had a real problem with it. And when I found the success with Worlds Apart in 94, 95, 96, which was even bigger than Brother Beyond, I mean, you know, we were famous in France, really famous. We had top 5 records, and one of them was called Je te donne, which really took our success to another level. But no, I enjoyed it. I mean, the great thing about that was I could nip over to France, you know, and then, you know, come back to the UK. And by then I had a relatively peaceful life in the UK, but was a big star in France. So I had the best of both worlds.
Well, what do you think it was? I mean, the World's Part, again, a very kind of a good start to the career in the UK, but then kind of fizzled out a little bit. But you maintained that success in Europe. What do you think that was down to? Was it the fact that you were just prepared to sing in French, or you were just open to a bigger market as possible?
You know, you need luck with everything. So we had a song called Baby Come Back, which was we'd recorded in Germany, and it had this Euro beat to it, and it just really worked in France. Plus also, we were asked to do a TV show and it was to be Take That's final ever TV show. And it was called Dance Machine. Anyway, they pulled out, and you know, their final performances were in Holland, and so the show said, oh, could you do 2 songs? And after we did that show was like at Bercy with 18,000 people all live on TV. We went top 10 in France with that record, and then it went to number 2. And yeah, so that kickstarted it. That was our lucky moment. And then a clever guy in the record company said, I think it would be a great idea if you covered this rock pop song and made it dance pop called Je te donne by this guy called Jean-Jacques Goldman. And he produced it, the guy in the record company, and that was just massive for us. Sold 600,000 copies and took us to a different place when you're a British band singing in French, and you have the big hit. It was a big story for us. And then we did Quand je rêve de toi, And so, yeah, we sort of became this, French kind of thing, really, even though we were Brits.
Mm. But it's given you this longevity that you didn't get with Brother Beyond, hasn't it? Because you're still doing stuff together. Is that the original lineup, or is it kind of a mix and match?
No, there's three of us. There was four of us originally, but one left about 97, 98. But the three of us from that time, Steve, Cal, and myself, still there doing it. We did just before the pandemic. We'd finished a big tour in France with other 90s artists, but we were the headline act. So in fact, we finished off at Bercy. It was 10,000 there that night, and so that is live band, dancers, and a big production. So no, we're very fortunate that we still get to do these tours and big shows in France.
Yeah, I suppose you're quite blessed in that regard, that you got a second crack at the whip, didn't you? I mean, some guys kind of fall by the wayside quite quickly, but with yourself, you've got that longevity. And now, Nathan, these you touched on it at the beginning, these 80s festivals, they've got a real Renaissance feel about them, haven't they? And I know Dean Michael. Dean Michael came on the Godcast and tells me how much he enjoys that. It's kind of the camaraderie and the kind of family feel about it. Just tell us about it from your perspective, this kind of 80s Renaissance.
Yeah, I see Dean a lot. We've the second part of the summer, we did a lot of the Let's Rock festivals, which are big 80s festivals. Let's Rock Leeds and Liverpool. So, they have them here in the Northwest and everywhere. And me and Dean are in the VIP area, getting the party going. So, and in fact, I'm with them. I'm with Black Lace on Saturday. We're doing a 50th birthday party for somebody that's booked us. And they're like me. They love it. They love getting the party going. And they're just good guys, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And Dean's been through some tough times. Oh, my God. I mean, I think my life has been tough, but he's at it almost as, probably even worse,
Well,
he has drama has followed him everywhere. But he's so honest and open about it all. And I love him for that. And he's a warm, friendly guy. I like him a lot.
Yeah. Anybody watching this interview now, Dean is the frontman for Black Lace, and in another Godcast interview, he tells a fabulous, hilarious story about doing the conga while he served a little bit of time at His Majesty's pleasure. But it's a lovely story from the guy. And what about your own kind of taste in music, Nathan? You've obviously lived in the pop world, but is your musical taste quite extensive? What do you like on an individual level?
I love so many different things. I used to love Japan, the 80s band Japan a lot. But I also love Luther Vandross. I went to see him a lot. So I love soul singers. I love disco. Sometimes I like to crank up AC/DC in the car and just, I have an eclectic music taste, but I like dance, I like pop, I like everything. So there's nothing that I wouldn't shy away from. I like soul music sometimes. It's I'm everywhere with my musical taste. It's all over the place.
You mentioned Boy George earlier, and his autobiography is one of my favorite books, and he talks about the clubs that he would hang around. So were you in these clubs? Look, I seem to remember him saying he was in the club always looking out for David Bowie and people like that, and he became friends with Steve Strange, who was in Visage, and you mentioned Japan, who obviously was David Sylvian, who was superb. Were you deliberately hanging out in these kind of clubs to see these guys, or did it just kind of happen?
In that era, if you wanted to meet people on just be out there, you had to go out. You do things. There was no online, was there? So you wanted to go out because you were closed off from the world if you weren't. I was a foot messenger when I was 17 in Soho. So I would walk around and bump into all sorts of people. And one of the first people I met was the guy, that would end up being the manager of the Pet Shop Boys. But he owned this company, it's like marketing company, and he offered me a job. It was called Tom Watkins. And I kind of turned him down, but I would see him a lot around Soho. And anyway, he went on to become this manager with the Pet Shop Boys. And we approached him when I was in Brother Beyond. And we said, you know, would you manage us? And he said, I'm just too busy with trying to get the Pet Shop Boys away. And they hadn't had any success at that point. Well, in between that time, we got signed by EMI, and then they did as well. And then when he'd had that success with West End Girls, we would see him around. And then he was desperate to be our manager. He kept saying, come on, now we can do it. Like, I've got success with them. You know, I can make it happen. And we said, no, you weren't interested then. And that's when he kind of got his own boy band in Bros. And probably we shot ourselves in the foot there a little bit.
Maybe.
I'm digressing from the story, but yes, I would meet a lot of people like that. And one of those people was also Philip Salon, and he was doing the Mud Club and all these cool clubs, and you know, he's friends with Boy George. And in fact, George came down to one of our early gigs in Tottenham Court Road in like 1986 or 87. He was there. There was about 400 girls, and then Boy George standing at the back, towering above everyone. It was quite
lovely. That's a lovely story.
Yeah,
yeah,
and
big
Matt,
fan of.
Matt came as well, and you know, so yeah, you'd meet a lot of people around clubbing in those days, and I met Steve Strange many times, you know.
Yeah, and did you ever do the musicals, Nathan? Were you kind of, you know, I can see you on stage heading up Grease, or you know, Joseph or something. Did you ever go down that route?
I auditioned for Joseph. I remember, sorry, Grease. I auditioned for Grease back then. I think Shane Ritchie got it at the time. I did end up doing A Slice of Saturday Night with Daniela Westbrook on the Isle of Man, which is a bit of a disaster. Not because of her. At the time she was in a good place. But yeah, I mean, so I've dipped my toe in a little bit, but you know, I always came back to being in pop and you know, doing stuff in that area.
Well, you certainly strike me as a very contented man and enjoying life at the moment. How's the kind of winter period looking? Have you got lots of shows and performances coming up then?
Yeah, I mean, at the weekend I'm in San Rafael, France, and then I'm in Reigate, Surrey on the Saturday, and then I'm up in Blackpool on the Sunday. All different kind of performances. One's with Worlds Apart, the other one's solo. You know, yeah, no, and every weekend it's like that. And then I love the juxtaposition between. Then on the Monday morning I'm doing the school run with my son Nico, or you know, renovating a house. You know, knocking down walls or whacking off plaster, and I like getting dirty and that, and then think, oh right, weekend I'm singing. So yeah, I like that balance of you know, of different things.
Yeah, Nathan, it's been great. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. It's been fascinating just learning about your career, and I'm delighted that you're living in the Northwest. It is beautiful. You're out in the Ribble Valley, which is just stunningly beautiful. I was out walking there last week. So yeah, and just thank you for coming on the Godcast. It's been great chatting, and wish you all the well for what comes next. Thank you.
No, Alex, it was lovely chatting to you. I can tell by some of your references that you know, the fact that you knew David Sylvian and Japan, that you know, your music knowledge is extensive. I'm sure your life knowledge is equally as extensive. We could probably talk for hours, but it's been nice to chat to you. Yeah, lovely.
Thank you. And yeah, and David Sylvian was, I think he got, I don't know if you ever went for this one, Nathan, but he was awarded the prettiest man in the world, I think in something like 1981. Maybe you could have a go at that at some time in the future.
I think I've got second place somewhere in France, or, you know, most popular baby's name now.
Yes.
Nathan in France is actually Nathan. I love it when they say that, you know, and I remember it becoming. I've met many mothers who say, "Oh, I named my son after you," especially in France. Especially,
well,
there's many a Nathan.
I'm totally jealous. Nobody's ever said that to me. Nathan, I'm going to be totally cheesy and say merci beaucoup. Thank you so much for coming on the Godcast, and we send our love to you.
Merci, Alex. The prochaine fois, and à tout à l'heure.
Au revoir.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.